Welcome to the Heart of Money podcast, where we discuss the personal and emotional elements of money and the impact that money has on every area of your life. I'm Austin Black, a personal finance coach that helps couples overcome their fear and frustration of financial management so they can take complete control of their money. What started as a desire to learn the fundamentals of money management has turned into a passion for helping couples work together to achieve financial success and strengthen their relationship with each other. Whether you're looking for the best strategies to manage your money as a couple, or you're tired of struggling to gain traction and want to overcome the fear and frustration associated with finances, I'm here to help, and this show is for you. Ready to learn more? Then let's talk about the heart of money. Hey folks, most people believe that in order to do anything successful with money, you either have to make a lot of it or spend as little of it as possible. And yeah, both of those are helpful, but they are not the key to becoming financially secure and independent. But there is a secret that I'm going to teach you of how to become debt-free and have financial security without the need for a huge income or restrictive lifestyle. I'm going to walk you through these strategies in my upcoming masterclass, the Financial Freedom Blueprint, which I'm hosting live once a month, and I want to personally invite you to join me in the next class. You can find out more details and sign up at freedommoneycoach.com/training. In this class, I'm going to teach you how to get on the same page with your spouse, how to take control of your money, and how to manage your behavior to accomplish your financial goals for the rest of your life. So head on over to freedommoneycoach.com/training, sign up, and join me on my next live masterclass. I look forward to seeing you next month. Hey folks, welcome back to the Heart of Money episode 90. I am your host, Austin Black, joined by my best friend from many years ago and now just a podcast co-host, Mr. Bob Wessler. How are you this evening, Bob?
It sounds like I got downgraded. I got upgraded and then I got downgraded all in less than 10 seconds. It's amazing.
The best part of that entire introduction is I go from the cuff every second, every time.
Right off the sleeve.
You never know what's going to come out. I try to.
You're just trying to keep up. That's all it is. You're trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Trying to beat me to the punch, and then you're
waiting. Of course, if I gave you the option of introducing, I don't know what you would say either.
Me either.
That makes maybe we should let you introduce this one as the co-host and introduce the actual host.
I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think about
that.
It's not a Tom Brady roast, but
Oh, goodness. Well, we are back in part 3 of our savings series. We've had 2 outstanding conversations, in my opinion, and I think this one's going to spark some commentary, I feel like. This was going to probably hit home, probably rub some people a little bit, some friction here, which is good. In fact, I had a interview a couple days ago that's going to air after this, where we talk about good friction in your money management. I think this is going to be one of those pieces. Bob, question for you. If you had to choose between paying off debt and building your savings, which would you do?
That's a loaded question because I don't have enough information. That's like C, isn't it? You have A and B, but the answer's C because there's not enough information to answer the question.
C is the economic answer of it depends.
And that was going to be my answer because I was going to hold my answer. But the way you structured that, you gave me A and B. It depends. It depends on the situation. It's going to vary from person to person and where they're at.
Yeah. Can you expound upon that?
Oh, I could, definitely. As I'm thinking about back in the 80s when car loans were 18%, because I always hear about my dad buying something at 18% interest. Are we back to 18% interest on cars yet? I have no idea.
I think for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we don't go at interest rates. We just go for 8 and 12-year loans for $400 or
you'll have the car paid off by the time it's in the junkyard.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really depends on where somebody's starting. If they've got a mountain of debt and no savings, we need to get some savings just so we don't incur more debt.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got some savings, figure out how much savings you have, where you're spending your money, and any extra income, I would say you probably need to push it more towards debt. But I think you also need to have a good chunk. And again, that depends on who the person is and what their lifestyle and situation is. Lifestyle can change. Lifestyle
Right.
can change. And that's a whole lot of money management, is how your lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
No, you don't need that eighth car, or that fourth car for that matter.
What about the
You might
second
need
one?
that second and third to support the first one if it's really old. But in most cases, it's a lifestyle. You talked about it being a behavioral management. It's really lifestyle. But see what you need to live on, what you are living on, where the difference needs to come from, and where that difference needs to be going.
And the interesting piece of this whole thought process, both angles involve risk protection and financial security. And, building up your savings is obviously going to create a buffer against the unknowns. Paying off debt is going to free up money to have more financial security. So, yeah, from the very get-go tip of this iceberg, either one is a viable, is a good option, is a viable option, and ideally we can do both, and maybe we don't do as much in each bucket as the other one. But so let's maybe look at this at a couple different angles, where, like we always do, where the idea initially came to mind for me was from the standpoint of someone doesn't have a lot of savings. Let's just say, they've got somewhere between 1 and 5,000 estimated, which for some is a lot, for others is not very much. But they've got $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 in debt. They have some protection on the saving sides, but not near enough to, if something big happens. And on the debt side, there's people that have a lot more debt. But that's still a substantial amount of money to be having to pay off. 9 times out of 10, probably. And like you said, it's going to depend upon that situation. I feel like someone is better off to maintain their savings and pay down the debt if they've got that buffer there, because the one thing that is going to keep them at risk is in having that debt around and having money that is automatically, no matter what, having to go towards that. So if something does happen, well, now you're splitting hairs of, okay, I've got to pay for this unexpected expense, but I've also got to keep up my debt payment. What am I going to do? Versus if we are chugging along, trying to knock that debt out as fast as possible, we are freeing up money sooner to be more secure and more stable in our finances. Now, can you say that switching up and the savings is going to create more comfort for you? Probably so. Probably a lot of people are going to say, well, I would feel better having 10,000 in the bank and owing 30 than having 2,000 and be paying off 50. That's just, that's a valid thought process. But mathematically, that's not how we look at things around here. We look at, how does it affect you? How does it go for your long-term goal? And typically I recommend that you pay off your debt as fast as you can, so then you can increase your savings. But to your point, it does depend. So what's your kind of more spread out thoughts on that?
Quit incurring the debt first.
Amen. Preach it, brother.
And that goes back to my first comment, reallocation is a lot of it. And again, it depends. Somebody that has no money, who hasn't been saving, is going to have a hard time saving. Somebody who's been spending and does a lot of spending is going to have a hard time not spending. And don't just pay your minimum payment if all you're paying on. And now, if we do a debt snowball type situation, but don't spend or don't pay just your minimum on everything that you have. You want to be knocking some of that out and not incurring more, at the sake of being able to continue to pay off that debt. So just paying for debt to pay for debt, if the pile's just getting bigger with interest rates going up, 2 years ago when credit cards went from 12 to 14% interest, and now they're 30% interest. Don't be using a credit card if you don't have to.
Yeah.
Use cash. Just don't incur debt from the aspect of, like I said before, I owe, it's off to work I go. Don't spend it before you've got it. That really hurts the scarcity, or really impacts the scarcity mindset. Is I've already spent it. Where am I going to come up with it? And that's the whole thing with debt, is that it's got to come from somewhere. As I said that before too. But you have to put a lockdown on what you're spending in order to change the process to be able to put more towards saving or towards paying off debt.
Yeah. I had a conversation just a couple of days ago on Facebook, and this is something that I see and hear a lot, and I'm sure you probably do too. From the standpoint of, and this this goes a little bit more into investing and saving, but it's the same principle. A lot of people, especially if they had a low interest rate on a mortgage in particular, maybe it's a car, whatever the case is, they feel better about keeping that debt and making the payments on it, and then socking money into their savings or investing that because of the low interest rate. They're like, I'm already paying this. I'm not paying a lot of interest. I can get this paid off in, I can get a 30-year mortgage paid off in 25 years, and I can be putting X amount of money into savings or into, retirement for that 25 years and, be a lot better off. And mathematically, there's some proof to that. There's some validity to that. And I know a lot of very wealthy people carry that mindset because they look at interest rates, the cost of money, compound interest return, the need to be investing early and often, et cetera, et cetera. For the average person who is trying to live a consumer lifestyle, I always flip it around and say, if you keep that debt, regardless of what the interest rate is, and you take whatever you have left and put into savings or to investing of some kind, honestly, what you're doing is prolonging both of your goals and dividing your money. Because if you are, let's say that you're spending $1,000 a month on a mortgage payment and you are saving $500, how much more could you gain if you spent $1,500, so $500 extra, paying that mortgage down in a third of the time, and then you now have $1,500 that you can throw into your savings or to your investment and start gaining the compound interest of that higher dollar amount. We can run the calculations on it and see what the difference is, but the point being, you are focused, you are intentional, and you're accomplishing each goal in itself, which allows you to mentally and emotionally, I feel like, have much better success than taking 25 years to become debt free, and honestly probably not have as much saved in the long run whenever it's all said and done. Would you agree or disagree with that concept?
That's a good question. And I think we've talked about this before. And I was thinking, when you're talking about debt versus savings, if you're talking about investing versus savings, it's a different conversation altogether.
Mm-hmm.
If we get away from the debt standpoint, or you're talking about paying off a mortgage versus saving versus investing, you've got different paradigms going on there.
Right.
Because investing is money you don't need right now. And from one aspect is money that you're willing to lose because there's no insurance. You're just not going to lose more than you put in there. We'll put it that way.
Yep.
If you put in $1, you can't lose 2. You could lose 2, but from a standpoint, you can't ever lose more than you put in, because when you get back to 0, they don't take money from you.
Yep.
Depending on the type of investment it is. Mortgage, it's a long-term investment. Houses tend to appreciate. Some don't. You want to stay away from those. But if it's on a foundation, more than likely it's going to appreciate.
If it's wheels, it's going to run down the road.
Or a hill, or... Yeah. So, investing versus mortgage, you're going to go from that angle versus investing versus savings. Which was your particular question on that? The savings or the investing versus paying off a mortgage?
So, I mean, where I often hear that conversation come from is mortgage versus investing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the mental concept is applicable whether it's investing or savings, either one.
Yeah. I heard Rachel, we talked about this last year, and then I was debating which way. And then I heard Rachel Cruz when we went down to Nashville last year. She said, the whole point of getting your mortgage paid off is to tackle that mountain, is to climb that mountain, to hit the peak, to get it paid off because you've gotten it taken care of and you don't owe that. Excuse me. For those of us that were at 3 to 5% interest on a mortgage, that was a conversation to have on many times was, well, the market's doing really well. And my rate is, the cost of money is nothing right now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt me to not put it into my mortgage and to put it in investments. Now we're at 6-7% interest on a house, and the market is stupid. Both are stupid. The housing market, the stock market, it's all stupid. If I'm in this economy and I just bought a house in the last 2 years, I'm putting money into the house because I have a really high interest rate. And the market is not going to do me any good at the rate that it is now because everything's high.
And would you say that is a mathematical decision or an emotional decision?
That is a mathematical decision.
Okay.
The paying off the mortgage is an emotional decision.
Yep.
Because you can run the numbers and you can be ahead one way or the other. I would say the smart way is that you don't do one and not do the other.
Yeah.
Dollar cost averaging somewhere in investments, if you have the money to do it, to set it aside, it's the whole point of the 401k, the Roth. You put your money to set aside to grow over time. The whole idea of up and to the right. It's going to increase over time. It's not going to look good for the next 3 or 4 years, but 30, 40 years from now, it should look better.
Right.
But you do a little over time. The whole idea of taking no money into an investment and pushing all to your mortgage in this economy is more likely to be done because the rates are so much higher.
Yep.
But again, you tend to lose out on some of that interest or some of that wealth building because you're paying it to your mortgage and you're trading off money now to grow later or to grow over time versus having that money not in hand going to the mortgage, but being debt free 15 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is, but you have that entire payment and there's real freedom that you didn't have today. So yeah, it's just looking at how do you choose to do it and from a logic standpoint versus an emotive standpoint and which one is going to win out in your, and it could change.
Right.
I mean, you could go back and forth sometimes. So,
well, and I think, the reason I asked you that question earlier is it's never a one size fits all approach, right? Because mathematically you very well could have a greater level of success splitting those hairs, dividing that money in some capacity. But, as a coach, our job is to keep someone in the right mindset to continue winning. So what do you mentally and emotionally accomplish with one decision versus the other? And going back to, to Dave's comments, the debt snowball method mathematically does not make sense.
Right.
To base your debt payoff by your smallest balance versus your highest interest does not mathematically add up. But because money is 80% behavior and 20% knowledge, the math doesn't matter to most people. I mean, some people are going to be motivated by the mathematics of it, obviously.
Yeah.
But by and large, your motivation is going to come from your accomplishment and your success. And not to say that there's one way to do that either, but there's a reason why the debt snowball under that framework or under that philosophy is so potent. And I like to carry that philosophy and mindset over to, paying off debt versus savings or investing. Either one, I do split on the investing than I do the savings for the reasons that you mentioned earlier of that, depending upon where you are in that process, in that phase. And we'll get our next episode. We're going to talk more about saving versus investing. But in my experience as both personally and as a coach, you can only win with money when you are motivated to manage it. And the mathematics don't always lead to motivation. It may lead to the numbers lining up and being more profitable, but does it give you satisfaction in the moment? Because you're not going to realize the mathematics of it till it's all said and done. And what encouraged you, motivated you to get to that point. So I think, we like anything, we can come at this from a variety of angles. Like you said at the very beginning, it depends every single time on where the person is, where they want to go, how they're going to get there. So I know you answered that question a little bit from the investing side. Let's flip that a little bit, because let's say that's not more. Let's say that it's a car payment or a credit card, and you're slated between that. I'm going to pay off this consumer debt essentially, or I'm going to build my savings, both of which, if you follow the baby step process, are very closely tied together in the steps. But there's still some mathematic benefit and there's still some mental benefit from that. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of said where I would end up. Do you have any contrast opinion to paying off that debt as fast as possible, or paying it off while you're building that savings bucket?
Yeah. And this goes back to what we talked about before, is if you have no savings, you need something.
Yep.
You've got to have enough to cover an emergency. When you talk about a mortgage, you're talking about an appreciating asset.
Yep.
When you talk about a car loan, you're talking about a depreciating asset, that it's already worth less than what you bought it for, unless it's this economy where you couldn't buy anything and it was double what it was worth.
Unless it's a good old 7.3 diesel truck that's 20 years old and worth $10,000 more than you paid for it.
Yeah. Or you do that on the flip side. But a vehicle is going to be a depreciating asset. A credit card balance is not an asset of any kind. You've already used whatever it was. And like we talked about planned obsolescence, that phone that you put on there for, gosh, what are they? 1,500 now? Close to 1,000, depending on the phone.
Couldn't tell you, I never spent near that much.
Yeah. But you're still paying on something and you might not even have it anymore. One of the examples I gave to somebody was they bought a dryer. I don't remember. It was not a cheap dryer, but they were not paying. They were only paying the minimum payment on the card.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't doing like a 0% interest if I pay it off in 6 months or 18 months or whatever it was just paying the minimum. And if you have a credit card and you look at the credit card statement, it says, if you just pay the minimum, it will take you another 1,600 years to pay off this balance. Usually it's not 1,600 years. It might be 1,598 years, but close to it. So
is there, sure there's not a decimal in there somewhere?
It depends on how much you got on it and what the interest rate is. But it always amused me that they put that on there because there are people that don't realize that if all you do is pay the minimum payment, you're not covering the interest. So this expensive dryer that he had cost him more by not paying more than the minimum payment on it, or having a plan to pay it off in a certain amount of time. The whole reason those 0% offers are out there is because people don't pay them in time. But anything that's depreciating or you've already spent,
aren't generous.
What? Let's see. The credit card fee is 3% to the merchant to swipe the card. They've increased the cost of your item by 3%, give or take, to cover that credit card, even if you're paying with cash, which sometimes you get the cash discount, which we've talked about. You do much better at that than I do. But if you get a 1 to 1.5% return in rewards, not even talking about airline miles, which is in front of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau now. But
tell me how you really feel.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that 3% that the merchant's charging you and you're getting 1.5 back. No, there's no generosity there. That's why they keep showing Jennifer Coolidge and LL Cool J and whoever else is cool or whatever on their commercials.
Iced tea and hot chocolate?
I guess. I thought that was cocoa and iced tea.
It is cocoa and iced tea. You didn't get it either.
I did get it. I get it. I'm not playing your games.
Anyway.
So yes, depreciating asset or money you've already spent for something that you no longer have or no longer has the glittery, shiny effect, get it paid off. Little bit different perspective than a 3% interest on a mortgage versus an 18 to 26% on a, well, not 18 on a car, but 6 to 12 on a car and 26 on anything on a credit card. But I did learn the other day that somebody can have ridiculous interest rates on cars too.
Oh yeah. I talked to someone here a few weeks ago that had been through bankruptcy, and I think their current loan term was in the 20s. I mean, it's like, that's just mind-boggling.
Their term or their rate?
Well, their current rate was in the 20% range. Yeah.
When I bought my Jeep Wrangler when I was down in Texas, I bought it from an outfit that they basically went to auction, bought Wranglers or some other Jeep products, and just restored them, refurbished them, did something to make them look better or work better. Usually it involved making them look more like the whatever the new package is, not the Renegade, but whatever it is. So it's all aftermarket. I still have that Jeep. We've had it for longer than half its life at this point, and it's no 2. But I remember him telling me that I would not want to finance through him because he would charge me the highest possible rate in the state of Texas.
Interesting.
Because he could.
Yeah.
I mean, that was part of their business plan, was that go somewhere else and get your financing. If you can't get financed elsewhere, we'll finance it for you at 38% or 29%, whatever the rate was. So, yeah, I mean, he just flat out said, I was looking at him as an option, but I could get a much better rate elsewhere. And since then, that's interesting.
Off, but... So I don't like car dealers.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go there.
But yeah, I think, to your point about appreciating versus, a liability, essentially, there's a whole nother, conversation that you can have on that. Whenever you're working with a coach, there's always guidance there. And it's sometimes, I think, hard to look past the numbers. And it's hard to look past, it's hard to do both. It's hard to look past the numbers to see the big picture and the emotional implication. it's also hard to look past the emotion and see mathematically what's this going to do for us. And I think depending upon what situation you are in with paying off debt versus building your savings versus investing, et cetera, we've given some guidelines and some thought parameters, and it really is a case-by-case basis. Now, generally speaking, I still think that you are going to, more often than not, be beneficial to free up your funds to have that protection. But again, if you're in that spot where you have no savings, we better get some money saved up. We better, pause, not necessarily pause, but we better throttle down our debt payments to get the money saved up so that we have something in case a breakage or whatever happens. But we don't want to, I guess what I want to encourage people with is we don't want to accept the burden of debt with the mindset of protecting ourselves financially with the rest of our money. I think that's kind of the center core component that I want people to be mindful of is, are you hurting yourself long term by sacrificing your independence and your financial ability by being honestly a slave to a creditor? And whether it's at a good rate or not, whether it's a good term or not, you owe and are a slave to that creditor until that debt's paid off. So do you hurt yourself and do you put yourself at more liability and risk by maintaining that while you try to take care of yourself with the rest of the money you have left over, versus let's gain control of everything and protect ourselves long term and be in control of all of our money versus what's the remnants that we have after everybody else has been paid, then we can pay ourselves, because that's going to take you a long time.
Yeah. And one aspect of that you talk about doing the math will never work if you don't know what the numbers are.
Yes.
Right now, like I've said multiple times, interest rates on savings accounts, 5%. But if you're paying 6% plus on a mortgage, it does not make sense to put a bunch of money in savings because you're not going to get ahead. If you're in the camp that you have money sitting in a savings account at 0.05%, stop it. Just stop. You can do so much more with your money right now than sit it in a savings account at Bank of America or Wells Fargo at 0.05%. But you're really not going to gain any ground if you're trying to save money and make the math work and have savings, and you're putting it to savings instead of a mortgage when you're at that type of interest rate. But yeah, like we said, every situation's different. You're going to have to get it to a comfort level yourself. How much can I afford? What should I be paying? How much can I pay off? And where should I be allocating funds elsewhere?
Amen to that. A positive conversation around the ways that money affects us. And, above all, we always want to just remind people that it's personal, it's emotional, it's going to impact you. So make the right choices, find the people that can support you. That's what we're here for, is to give that, the outside perspective, to give you ideas to think about, and to be here if you want to work with someone that can help you accomplish those goals and be on the right path. Because money management isn't easy. It's also not complicated. And whenever you find someone that can guide you to the simplest strategy that, even though will take some work, will reap results, you're going to be glad that you took that step. And that's what we want to do for you here. Hey folks, did you find today's episode valuable? If so, I would truly appreciate it if you left a 5-star review and shared the episode with a friend. My goal is to help as many couples as possible in their journey to gaining complete control of their money. Also, I have a free gift that I want to share with you for taking the time to listen to today's show. I have a brand new video training that outlines 5 steps for making a budget that will give you true financial freedom. In this training, I share how you can create a budget in a matter of minutes and make it easy to implement. Who doesn't want that, right? You'll learn what categories you need to cover all the bases each month and how to protect yourself against financial stress. You can access your free gift at freedommoneycoach.com/budget guide. That's freedommoneycoach.com/budget guide.